Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're going deep, like really deep into Area 51.
Oh yeah, Area 51, the gift that keeps on giving.
I mean, it's that super mysterious military base,
Yeah.
right smack in the Nevada desert. You know, the one that just sparks all those like wild conspiracy theories.
It really captures the imagination, doesn't it? It's like a giant question mark out there in the desert.
And we're not holding back. We've got excerpts from Ancient Aliens Inside Area 51's UFO Secrets. And let me tell you, the stuff they're talking about is, well, let's just say it's out there.
Definitely some intriguing claims in that book.
We're talking about possible alien crashes, the government trying to cover it all up. Oh, and get this. There's even an alien survivor nicknamed Joe Rod, who's supposedly working with, like,
I
scientists.
heard about that one, Joe Rod. It's a wild story.
So yeah, that's what we're getting into today.
Separating fact from fiction with Area 51, it's almost impossible. I mean, we're dealing with classified information and stories that sound like they came straight out of a Hollywood movie.
But that's kind of what makes this whole thing so exciting, right? Let's see what we can actually, piece together from these sources.
Yeah, let's dive in.
All right, so picture this. It's May 19th, 1953. The Cold War is in full swing, tensions are high, and the U.S. is doing all these nuclear tests in the Nevada desert.
Classic Cold War stuff. Always testing, always pushing the limits.
Right. And the code name for this particular series of tests, Upshot Knothole. So right after one of these tests at Yucca Flat, get this, there are witnesses who report seeing a disc-shaped object just falling out of the sky, heading straight toward Las Vegas.
Like plummeting.
Yeah, like it just took a nosedive, it disappears into the mountains, and 2 days later, things get even weirder.
Weirder? How much weirder can it get?
Oh, you'll see. A team of like 40 engineers is suddenly assembled in Phoenix, and they're taking on this super secretive bus ride to Kingman, Arizona. It's all very cloak and dagger.
Okay, so we've got a mysterious object, now secret transport of engineers. This is getting interesting.
They arrive at night, and the whole crash site is swarming with military police, like something big went down.
And what do they find?
Okay, so according to these sources, what those engineers find is a 40-foot diameter, disc-shaped craft. And get this, it's totally intact, not a scratch on it.
Wow, so not your typical crash landing. A 40-foot disc, perfectly intact, you said.
That's what they claim.
And they found this in Kingman, Arizona. Why not take it straight to Area 51? I mean, that's where they're supposedly taking everything else.
That's a good question. Maybe they needed a more secure location for, initial assessment, a place that was less noticeable. Who knows? Maybe Area 51 wasn't even ready for something like that yet, since it was still in its early stages back then.
It's possible. They needed time to figure out what they were dealing with, especially if it was something truly out of this world.
Okay, so get ready, because this is where things get really interesting. The sources say they found 4 beings inside the craft.
Beings? You mean like aliens?
Yeah, like aliens. And they took both the craft and these beings to a super remote spot in the Nevada desert. This place called Groom Lake, which you probably guessed, eventually becomes Area 51. So they basically built Area 51 around this alleged crash retrieval, hiding it away in this super secret mountainous area.
So that's how Area 51 gets its start. A crash retrieval of an alien spacecraft. It's hard to even wrap your head around that.
Right. And it gets wilder. The sources claim that one of those beings from the crash actually survived.
One of them survived? Seriously?
Yeah, and they call him Joe Rod. They say he actually worked with the U.S. government at Area 51 to, reverse engineer their alien technology.
Okay, hold on a second. Joe Rod, this alleged alien survivor, was working with the government. That's a pretty huge claim.
It is. And we get most of what we know about Joe Rod from 2 people. Captain Bill Newhouse, a former Navy pilot who claims he worked at Area 51 in the 60s, and this guy named Dan Burrish, who says he was brought in as a microbiologist to take care of Joe Rod.
A microbiologist. So they're saying this Joe Rod was some kind of biological entity?
Yeah, and they both describe Joe Rod in pretty good detail. They even say he communicated through telepathy, kind of like, how a parrot repeats what you say.
Telepathy, that's a whole other level of communication.
Right.
It's hard to imagine.
I know, right? And our house actually said that there was a whole process for meeting Joe Rod, like a whole introduction thing, and that he was kept in this special, underground chamber.
So they're treating this being, this Joe Rod, with a lot of, I guess, respect, maybe even caution. I mean, it's not every day you have an alien working alongside you.
Right. And it makes you wonder, What do you make of all these claims? Are they believable?
Well, it's important to, take these stories with a grain of salt, right? Like, oh, House and Bursch's accounts are super compelling, no doubt. But is there any real evidence to back it up?
Yeah, that's fair.
We got to consider their backgrounds. Could they be exaggerating or
Hmm,
maybe misinterpreting things? Doesn't necessarily mean they're lying, but it does mean we need more info before we can say for sure what happened.
that's a good point. But let's, just for a minute, play devil's advocate here. What if there is some truth to these claims? Like, imagine an alien being, right, working side by side with human scientists, sharing their knowledge, pushing the boundaries of technology. I mean, it sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely the kind of stuff that sparks the imagination. And you're right, these accounts of Girard, they're not isolated incidents. There are tons of other claims out there about governments all over the world working with extraterrestrials. And often it's in these super secret underground facilities. It's a recurring theme, isn't it?
Yeah, makes you wonder what's going on down there.
Yeah.
And it really adds to the whole mystery of Area 51, doesn't it? The possibility that something truly extraordinary is happening right under our noses.
It definitely makes you think. And speaking of government knowledge and potential alien life, our next story takes us to, well, the heart of American power, the Pentagon. And to a president you might have heard of, Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Eisenhower. Oh, yeah, this is where we get into the whole Valiant Thor story, right?
You got it.
Yeah.
And this account comes from Frank Strange's, a chaplain who claimed to have had, get this, top secret clearance. It sounds like something straight out of a movie. A UFO lands in Virginia in 1957, surrounded by police, and out walks this human-looking guy who says, I need to speak to President Eisenhower.
It's wild. And the craziest part is, he actually gets to meet Eisenhower.
Right, like how does that even happen?
Strange says this visitor called himself Valiant Thor. He was taken to the Pentagon to meet with Eisenhower, and they apparently talked about, like, nuclear weapons.
Hmm.
Thor was supposedly worried about our use of nukes and wanted to warn the president about, the dangers.
It's like intergalactic diplomacy, right? An alien ambassador trying to prevent us from destroying ourselves. It's a fascinating concept, even if it sounds totally unbelievable.
Yeah, it really makes you think, was this a genuine attempt at communication between species? Did Eisenhower listen to Thor's warnings? And if any of this is true, what does it say about the level of contact our government may have had with, extraterrestrial civilizations all the way up to the president?
It's mind-blowing to even consider, but like with all these stories, we have to approach it with a healthy dose of skepticism. Is there any official documentation or proof that this meeting happened? Anything that wasn't just someone's word.
That's true. But even if it's just a story, it's one that continues to fascinate people, especially those who are really intrigued by the possibility of, like, real alien contact.
I think it taps into those deep-seated fears and hopes we have about the universe and our place in it. It makes us ask those big questions. Are we alone? Are there others out there watching us?
Definitely. And sometimes the most intriguing stories, they come from the least expected sources. Like our next one, it takes us away from these mysterious figures like Joe Rod and Valiant Thor, and instead it introduces us to, well, a legend in the world of science and engineering, Clarence Kelly Johnson.
Ugh, Kelly Johnson. A true icon. He was the head of Lockheed's Skunk Works division, the place that birthed some of the most incredible aircraft ever built. The U-2 spy plane, for example, that thing could fly at a mind-blowing 80,000 feet and take these insane aerial photographs. We're talking about a brilliant, brilliant engineer, a real game changer in aerospace.
Yeah, he was a visionary. And even he had a UFO encounter. In December of 1953, just a few months after that alleged crash in Kingman, Johnson reported seeing this strange object in the sky.
Really? Kelly Johnson saw a UFO. I mean, this is the guy who designed some of the most advanced aircraft of his time. He knew what he was looking at.
He was with some colleagues in Agoura, California. He even made these detailed sketches of the craft and submitted them to Project Blue Book, the government's UFO investigation at the time.
Wow, that's fascinating. What makes his sighting so important is that Johnson was known for his sharp mind. Like, he could identify almost any aircraft just by looking at it. So if even he couldn't explain what he saw, that adds a whole new level of credibility to his account.
Especially considering, like you said before, talking about UFOs back then could really ruin your reputation, especially for someone in Johnson's position. I mean, he had a lot to lose.
For sure. And it makes you wonder, did the sighting maybe play a role in the creation of Area 51?
It was founded just 2 years later, right? Maybe Johnson, with all his expertise in advanced aircraft and his own experience with something he couldn't explain, thought, hey, we need a dedicated top-secret facility to investigate these things.
It's definitely an intriguing possibility. Maybe he saw something so far beyond our technology that he realized we needed a special place to study it, away from public scrutiny and the limitations of, like, conventional scientific thought.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, so now let's switch gears for a minute and talk about something that's always fascinated me about Area 51. This idea that there's this whole other world hidden underground, like a vast network of tunnels and facilities beneath the surface.
Oh, yeah, the underground world of Area 51. It's a popular theory, and our sources take us to a place called the Tenued Mine, just outside the base's perimeter. This is where researcher Wolf McCarran and mining expert Christian G. No believe they found evidence of this massive tunnel system connected to Area 51.
A whole network, stretching who knows how far.
And what's really interesting about their investigation is this concept of heap leaching. It's a mining process that uses chemicals to extract minerals from ore.
Chemicals, like what kind of chemicals?
Well, things like mercury and cyanide, it's a pretty intense process. Basically, they create these huge piles of earth, run hoses through them, and those chemicals break down the material, leaving behind the minerals thereafter.
Oh, wow, that's intense.
Yeah, it is. And the theory is that the government might be using this heap leaching technique to dispose of all the dirt they dug up while building these underground facilities. I mean, think about it. You excavate massive tunnels, you're going to end up with mountains of dirt. What do you do with it?
That's true. I never even thought about that. So they're saying they take it to these nearby mines and use heap leaching to basically make it disappear.
Yeah, exactly. It would effectively vanish without a trace, and nobody would be the wiser. It's a pretty clever way to hide the evidence if that's what they're doing.
It would be. But
Er,
why even go underground in the first place?
Well, our sources point to the Cold War. With the threat of nuclear war very real back then, the government needed secure, hidden locations for sensitive operations and research. And underground facilities provided the perfect solution. Protection from surveillance, shielding from potential blasts, and a level of secrecy that you just couldn't achieve above ground.
Right. It was all about staying hidden and protected.
Right.
So the Cold War basically drove them underground.
It's fascinating how real-world events can shape our technology and even influence our architectural choices, isn't it? And, the Cold War might be over, but its legacy in the form of these potential underground facilities seems to live on.
And some researchers believe these facilities aren't just limited to Area 51, right? There's talk of this gigantic, interconnected network that links various military installations across the country.
Oh, yeah, that's a popular theory. It's like an entire hidden world beneath our feet operating completely outside of public knowledge or oversight.
It's hard to even imagine. A secret world below the surface.
Some researchers even suggest this network could stretch for hundreds, maybe even thousands of miles, with high-speed trains carrying personnel and materials between these secret locations. And they point to places like Dulce, New Mexico, Los Alamos, Roswell, even Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado as potential stops along this underground web.
Cheyenne Mountain, that famous underground command center.
The one and only.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a pretty wild idea, this massive underground network connecting all these sensitive sites.
It sounds like something straight out of a spy novel. But the implications are kind of unsettling, don't you think?
Definitely thought-provoking. It raises questions about government secrecy, how far their operations extend, and what it means for transparency and accountability. If this network exists, what does it say about the priorities of those in power, how they perceive threats, both from within and outside the country?
Yeah, it makes you wonder. All right, let's move on to one last fascinating piece of the Area 51 puzzle before we wrap up this part of our deep dive. The mysterious Janet Airlines.
Ah, yes, Janet Airlines, the airline that officially doesn't exist.
Right, and we hear about it from David Freehoff, who was an SR-71 pilot. He worked at Area 51 for 6 years, starting back in 1979.
The SR-71 Blackbird, the fastest plane in the world, capable of crossing the entire country in just an hour, those pilots were the elite of the elite.
Exactly. And Freehoff had top-secret clearance. He was part of this exclusive group that flew the SR-71. So his story is particularly compelling because he was so deeply involved in these highly classified operations.
When someone like that speaks up, you gotta listen.
Absolutely. Yeah. Freehoff talks about commuting daily from McCarran Airport in Las Vegas to Area 51. And he flew on this mysterious airline called Janet Airlines. It's completely shrouded in secrecy, the flights are unmarked, no call signs, and get this, the passengers have blacked out windows so they can't even see where they're going.
It's like they want to make sure you have absolutely no idea where you are, even when you're up in the air.
Right, and the fact that Janet Airlines even exists, it speaks volumes about the level of secrecy surrounding Area 51. It's like they're hiding in plain sight, transporting personnel and materials to and from this top-secret base, completely under the radar.
It's a reminder that there's a whole lot going on that we're just not privy to, a hidden world operating right alongside our own.
And it gets even weirder. Freyhoff noticed that during his commute, a specific group of individuals would board the Janet 737 in Vegas. But when they arrived at Area 51, they wouldn't get off with everyone else. They were taken away on a bus to a separate, even more secretive facility. This place is known as S4.
S4. That's where things get really interesting. It's been the subject of intense speculation for years. Rumored to be where they store and study recovered alien technology, spacecraft, all that.
I've heard about S4. It's like the holy grail of Area 51 conspiracy theories.
One of the most well-known accounts of S4 comes from Bob Lazar, a controversial figure who claims he worked there back in the late 80s, reverse engineering alien propulsion systems.
Bob Lazar, yeah. And Freyhoff's observations seem to line up with Lazar's story. They both talk about the Janet Airlines flights, the secret bus ride to S4, the extreme security surrounding the whole thing.
It's remarkable, isn't it? You have these seemingly unrelated accounts from people with totally different backgrounds, and yet their stories converge on certain key details. It's almost as if they're each describing different pieces of the same puzzle, slowly revealing a bigger, more complex picture.
Freyhoff even says he knows people who worked with him at Area 51 who have confirmed seeing Lazar there, even though Lazar's critics claim he made the whole thing up. It's also hush-hush. You can bet there are some people out there who would prefer this information stayed buried.
That's the allure of Area 51, right? The secrecy, the rumors, the conspiracy theories, the government's tight-lipped approach just fuels the fire, and the lack of any official information creates a vacuum that people quickly fill with their own interpretations, often shaped by their hopes and fears and what they already believe.
It's like everyone has a theory about what's really happening at Area 51, and everyone wants to think they know the truth.
It's a testament to the power of the unknown. Our brains just hate a vacuum, you know? When we're faced with silence or ambiguity, we instinctively try to fill in the gaps ourselves. We create our own narratives, and those narratives are often influenced by our deepest desires and fears. It's almost like we're trying to put together this giant jigsaw puzzle, but we're missing most of the pieces. We might never know the full truth about what really happened at Area 51, but the stories themselves, they give us a glimpse into, like, our deepest anxieties and desires, especially when it comes to the unknown.
You're right. I mean, it really makes you think, what else could be out there? What are we not seeing? And sometimes a clue, a piece of the puzzle, comes from a completely unexpected place.
Oh, I like that. Unexpected clues. It's like a detective story, right? Trying to unravel the secrets of Area 51.
Exactly. And speaking of unexpected sources, our next story takes us away from these mysterious figures like Joe Rod and Valiant Thor and introduces us to, well, a legend, a giant in the world of science and engineering, Clarence Kelly Johnson.
Kelly Johnson. Now, there is a name that carries weight. He was the head of Lockheed's Skunk Works division, the birthplace of some of the most incredible aircraft ever built. The U-2 spy plane, for example. That thing could fly at an unbelievable 80,000 feet, taking these crystal clear aerial photographs. We're talking about a brilliant, brilliant engineer. Someone who truly pushed the boundaries of what was possible in aerospace.
He was a visionary, no doubt. And even he had a UFO encounter. Back in December of 1953, just a few months after that alleged crash in Kingman, Johnson reported seeing a very strange object in the sky.
Wait, seriously, Kelly Johnson saw a UFO. I mean, this is the guy who designed some of the most advanced aircraft of his time. He knew what he was looking at. If he couldn't explain it, then it must have been something truly extraordinary.
He was with some colleagues in Agoura, California, and he even made detailed sketches of the craft. He submitted them to Project Blue Book, which was the government's official UFO investigation program at the time. They took it seriously enough to document it.
That's incredible. What makes this sighting so significant is that Johnson was known for his sharp mind and incredible observational skills. He could identify almost any aircraft just by looking at it. So if even he couldn't explain what he saw, it adds a whole other level of credibility to this whole UFO phenomenon.
Right. And like we talked about before, talking about UFOs back then, especially for someone in Johnson's position, could have seriously damaged his reputation. He had a lot to lose.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder, did this sighting play a role in the creation of Area 51, which was founded just 2 years later?
It's possible, right? Maybe seeing something he couldn't explain, something so far beyond our technology at the time, made Johnson realize that we needed a dedicated top-secret facility to investigate these things, a place away from public scrutiny, where they could push the boundaries of science and technology without limitations.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like he saw the future, in a way. He saw the potential for something truly groundbreaking, maybe even world-changing, and he knew that we needed a place like Area 51 to explore it.
It's an intriguing thought. Okay, so now let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that's always captivated my imagination when it comes to Area 51. The idea of a vast, hidden world underground. A network of tunnels and facilities, stretching who knows how far beneath the surface.
Oh yeah, the underground world of Area 51, it's a theory that just won't die. And our sources actually take us to a place called the Tenu Mine, which is just outside the perimeter of the base. It's here that a researcher named Wolf McCarran and a mining expert named Christian G believe they've uncovered evidence of a massive tunnel system connected to Area 51.
A whole secret network, right beneath our feet. It's almost too crazy to believe.
It's definitely a bold claim. And what's particularly fascinating about their investigation is this concept of heap leaching. Now, heap leaching is a mining process that uses chemicals like mercury and cyanide to extract minerals from ore.
Mercury and cyanide. Wow, that sounds pretty intense.
Yeah, it's a pretty heavy-duty process. Essentially, they create these huge piles of earth, run hoses through them, and these chemicals break down the material, leaving behind the valuable minerals thereafter.
Okay, I'm following.
Yeah.
But what does this have to do with Area 51 and this underground network?
Well, the theory is that the government might be using this heap leaching technique to dispose of the massive amounts of dirt that would have been excavated when they were building these underground facilities. Think about it. You dig these huge tunnels, you're going to end up with mountains of dirt. So what do you do with it?
That's true. I never even thought about that. Where does all that dirt go? You can't just leave it lying around.
Exactly. So the theory is that they transport it to these nearby mines and use heap leaching to basically make it disappear. It would effectively vanish without a trace, blending in with the existing landscape, and nobody would be the wiser. It's a pretty ingenious way to hide the evidence, if that's what they're doing.
That's pretty clever. But why go through all that trouble in the first place?
Yeah.
Why build these massive underground facilities?
Well, our sources point to the Cold War. With the threat of nuclear war very real back then, the government needed secure, hidden locations for sensitive operations and research. Underground facilities offered the perfect solution. Protection from surveillance, shielding from potential blasts, and a level of secrecy that you just couldn't achieve with any above-ground structure.
So they went underground for protection and secrecy, driven by the anxieties of the Cold War.
Exactly. It's a classic example of how real-world events can shape our technology and even influence the choices we make about architecture and infrastructure. The Cold War might be over, but its legacy, in the form of these potential underground facilities, seems to live on.
It's like a ghost from the past, still haunting us today. And some researchers believe that these underground facilities aren't just limited to Area 51. There's talk of this massive interconnected network of underground facilities that stretches across the country, linking various military installations.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a hidden world right beneath our feet, operating completely outside of public knowledge or oversight. The scale of it is mind-boggling.
It's almost impossible to grasp. A secret world below the surface. It sounds like something out of a science fiction novel.
Some researchers even proposed that this underground network could span hundreds or even thousands of miles, with high-speed trains shuttling personnel and materials between these secret locations. They point to places like Dulce, New Mexico, Los Alamos, Roswell, all of these places steeped in mystery and intrigue, and even Cheyenne Mountain, that iconic underground command center in Colorado Springs, as possible nodes in this vast subterranean web.
It's fascinating and a little bit terrifying at the same time. This idea of a hidden world operating beneath the surface, a world we know nothing about. What are they doing down there? What secrets are they hiding?
It's a question that has haunted researchers and conspiracy theorists for decades. It's the ultimate mystery, isn't it? What's going on in the shadows?
Exactly. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about the world. All right, so let's move on to one final piece of the Area 51 puzzle before we wrap up this part of our deep dive. The mysterious Janet Airlines.
Yes, Janet Airlines. The airline that officially doesn't exist, but we know it does.
It's the airline shrouded in secrecy, operating under the radar, ferrying people to and from this top-secret location. And we learned about it from someone who experienced it firsthand. David Freehoff, an SR-71 pilot who worked at Area 51 for 6 years, starting back in 1979.
The SR-71 Blackbird, the fastest plane in the world, capable of crossing the entire country in just an hour. Talk about elite. Those pilots were the best of the best.
Absolutely. And Freehoff had top-secret clearance. He was part of this elite group that flew the SR-71, which makes his story so compelling. He was deeply involved in highly classified operations, and he's talking about something that for the most part has remained hidden from public view.
When someone with his credentials and experience speaks up, you have to pay attention.
Exactly. Freehoff talks about commuting daily from McCarran Airport in Las Vegas to Area 51, and he flew on this mysterious airline called Janet Airlines. The flights were unmarked, no call signs, and get this, the passengers had blacked out windows so they couldn't even see where they were going.
Talk about secrecy. They didn't want those passengers knowing anything about where they were going or what they were involved in.
Not a clue. And the fact that Janet Airlines even exists, it just proves how secretive everything about Area 51 really is. It's like they're hiding in plain sight, transporting personnel and materials to and from this top-secret base completely under the radar.
It's a stark reminder that there's a whole lot going on behind the scenes that we, the public, are simply not aware of. There's a hidden world operating right alongside our own, and we only get these little glimpses into it every now and then.
And it gets even more interesting. Freehoff noticed that during his commute, there was this specific group of individuals who would board the Janet 737 in Vegas.
Yeah.
But when they got to Area 51, they wouldn't get off with everyone else. They were taken away on a bus to an even more secretive facility. This place is known as S4.
S4, the holy grail of Area 51 conspiracy theories. Rumored to be the place where they store and study all the really good stuff. Recovered alien technology, spacecraft, you name it. It's like the ultimate forbidden zone.
I've heard so many stories about S4. It's like the stuff of legends. And one of the most famous accounts of S4 comes from Bob Lazar, who claims he actually worked there in the late 80s, reverse engineering alien propulsion systems.
Bob Lazar. A controversial figure, no doubt. But his story has resonated with so many people. It's like he tapped into something deep within our collective consciousness, this desire to believe that we're not alone, that there's something more out there.
Absolutely. And what's so fascinating is that Freehoff's observations seem to align with Lazar's story. They both talk about the Janet Airlines flights, the secret bus ride to S4, the incredibly tight security surrounding the entire facility.
It's almost too perfect, isn't it? You have these two seemingly unrelated accounts from people with totally different backgrounds and experiences, and yet their stories converge on certain key details. It's like they're describing different pieces of the same puzzle, and the more pieces we find, the clearer the picture becomes.
And the more intriguing the mystery gets. Freehoff even said he knew people who worked with him at Area 51 who confirmed seeing Lazar there, even though Lazar's critics insist he made the whole thing up. It's all so hush-hush. You can bet there are some people who would much rather this information stayed buried.
Well, that's the nature of Area 51, isn't it? The secrecy, the rumors, the conspiracy theories. The government's tight-lipped approach just fuels the fire, and the lack of any official information creates this vacuum, this void that people quickly fill with their own interpretations. And those interpretations are often shaped by their hopes and fears, their beliefs about the world, and maybe even their desire to believe in something bigger than themselves.
It's like everyone has their own version of the truth, their own theory about what's really going on at Area 51. It's become this cultural phenomenon, this symbol of the unknown and the unexplained.
It's a testament to the enduring power of mystery. The human mind just can't resist a good puzzle. And when faced with silence and ambiguity, we instinctively try to fill in the gaps ourselves. We create our own narratives, our own explanations, and those narratives often say more about us, about our hopes and fears, than they do about the actual truth.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive. We've explored stories of alleged alien encounters, advanced technology, secret underground facilities, a mysterious airline that operates in the shadows. It's almost overwhelming.
It's a lot to take in, for sure. But I think what's so fascinating is how all these different threads, all these seemingly unconnected stories, they come together to weave this narrative that challenges our conventional understanding of history, technology, and maybe even our place in the universe. We've heard accounts from people with backgrounds in science, aviation, the military, and they all seem to point towards something truly extraordinary happening behind that veil of secrecy that surrounds Area 51.
It's like we're getting these brief glimpses into a hidden world. A world where advanced technologies are being developed, where contact with other intelligent life may have already happened, and where the boundaries of what we consider possible are constantly being pushed further and further.
And that, I think, is the ultimate allure of Area 51. It represents the unknown, the unexplored, the tantalizing possibility that we are not alone in this vast cosmos. It forces us to confront our own limitations, our assumptions about the world, and the very nature of reality itself.
It's a powerful reminder that there's still so much we don't know, so much that remains hidden from view. And who knows what other secrets might be buried beneath the desert sands, just waiting to be uncovered.
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? The mystery endures. And as long as there are questions unanswered, people will continue to search for those answers, to dig deeper, to unravel the secrets of Area 51.
And maybe, just maybe, one day, some of those secrets will be revealed. But until then, the mystery lives on. It's mind-boggling, isn't it? This idea that there's this whole other world hidden right beneath our feet. A world with technologies and knowledge that we can't even begin to fathom.
It really highlights the fact that we're still just scratching the surface. There's so much we don't know, so much that's still out there waiting to be discovered. And it underscores the point that the pursuit of knowledge is a journey, not a destination.
I love that. A journey, not a destination. It's like what we've been doing with this deep dive, right? We're exploring these stories, these mysteries, and we're piecing together this puzzle, even though we know we might never have all the pieces.
Exactly. It's about asking questions, challenging assumptions, and being open to the possibility that what we think we know is just a tiny fraction of what's really out there.
Like the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
Right. We see this little bit sticking out above the water, but there's this massive hidden structure beneath the surface.
Precisely. And that brings us back to the question you posed earlier. If this underground network exists, if these technologies are being developed in secret, what are the implications? It forces us to think about things like power, transparency, accountability, and it makes us question the very nature of progress. What does it mean to progress if it happens behind closed doors, hidden from public view?
You know, it's interesting. Throughout this deep dive, we've talked about alien encounters, advanced technology, secret facilities. And while those are all incredibly fascinating in their own right, I think the most important question isn't necessarily what's out there, but rather, what does it all mean for us?
I think you've hit on something really important. The stories themselves are captivating, but the real value lies in what they reveal about ourselves, our hopes and fears, our curiosity, our anxieties. These stories act like a mirror, reflecting back our own perceptions of the unknown. They force us to confront those big questions about our place in the universe, our relationship with technology, and ultimately what it means to be human in a world where the boundaries of what's possible are constantly shifting.
It's not just about the secrets themselves, but about how those secrets shape our understanding of ourselves and the world we live in.
Precisely. And that's what makes this topic so endlessly fascinating. It's a reflection of our own evolving consciousness, our ongoing quest to understand not just the what, but the why. Why are we here? Are we alone? What is our purpose? These are the questions that drive us to explore, to discover, and to push the boundaries of what we know.
And Area 51, with all its mystery and intrigue, has become a symbol of that quest, hasn't it? It's a place that embodies the unknown, the unexplained, and the possibility that there's so much more to reality than we currently understand.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that we're still in the early stages of our journey as a species. There's so much left to discover, so much left to learn, and who knows what wonders await us just beyond the horizon.
Well, I think you've given us a lot to ponder today. As we wrap up this deep dive into Area 51 and all its mysteries, what's one final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with? What should they take away from all of this?
I think the most important thing to remember is to cultivate a sense of informed skepticism. Approach these stories, these theories, with curiosity and an open mind. But don't just blindly accept everything you hear. Ask questions, challenge assumptions, consider the motivations behind the information you're presented with, and don't be afraid to draw your own conclusions. The truth, whatever it may be, is out there, but it's up to each of us to determine what we believe.
That's great advice. Be curious, be skeptical, and most importantly, keep searching for those answers, because the journey of discovery is just as important as the destination itself.
Well said. And who knows, maybe one day some of these mysteries will be revealed. But until then, keep looking up, keep asking questions, and never stop exploring the unknown. There's a whole universe out there just waiting to be discovered.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive. And to all our listeners out there, keep those minds open, keep those questions coming, and we'll see you on our next adventure into the world of the unexplained.